We are as intrigued by the forensic files as you are. In this particular episode, it's got everything. Swinger parties, adultery, and murder. And we're about to get into all these interesting details. And the detective who investigated that case is here with us. Watch this.
Ellen Sherman found strangled in her bedroom, her underpants wrapped around her neck.
It appeared at first glance as if she were the subject of a sexual assault.
Her husband had an alibi. He was on a sailing trip. But as police dug deeper, they uncovered some very interesting details about the couple's sex life.
I remember being at a New Year's Eve party. They had several couples there, and I guess they were going to swap partners.
They had an open relationship, but when Ellen became pregnant, she decided she could no longer live with her husband's infidelity.
Ellen said he can have his girlfriend and his sailboat, and that's it.
Police determined Edward then murdered his wife, staged the scene, and turned on the air conditioner full blast to delay the effects of rigor mortis, hoping to mislead investigators as to the time of death.
One of the reasons I like doing these follow-ups is we learn more about the perpetrator. We've learned more about Edward that was not in the forensic files. He assaulted his first wife, choked a woman, assaulted his mistress. That's, in fact, the woman he lived with after having killed his wife. Joining us, Rolanda Watts, journalist and author, Annalise Getz, attorney, Darren Kavanaugh, attorney. Let us look at what went on in this couple's crazy relationship. As it was said, open marriage, they hosted swinging parties, he had a child with his mistress. Darren, the more boundaries you violate, the crazier you make your relationships, the more likely things are to degenerate into violence.
Yeah, maybe an understatement. This was 2 full scoops of crazy, and I have to say,
Wait, Darren. How dare you judge people that are into swinging parties? Are you saying? No, I'm serious.
Judgment.
I'm being somewhat serious.
Oh, no.
Because just because alternative sexual practices, and you got to clarify this because this is not just alternative sexual practices.
Oh, yeah, I'm not coming to this from a place of judgment. Whatever people want to do to get their freak on is all right by me. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the layers of deception and all that other stuff that goes into these kinds of cases. If loving a murder case is wrong, Drew, I don't want to be right.
Rolanda, it's as Darren is saying, we don't know how enthusiastic the woman that eventually was murdered was about the way this marriage was conducted.
Well,
oftentimes somebody is into it and somebody tolerates it.
Well, that's the problem with threesomes. Somebody's going to feel left out after a while. But
oh wait, I got some tips for you.
Not that I know. But really, when you start mixing and matching so many different elements and energies and love, and then children all mixed up into this. And what really got me is I was going along with this story, and then the guy says, I feel sorry about this lifestyle I set up for my wife. I understand she needed better, but I really didn't do it. And then I start going like, well, did the other woman do it because now the wife is pregnant?
Right.
I mean, is there more to the story that wasn't?
Rolanda, I thank you for saying that because, Annalise, that is what gets crazy making about this, right? Lots of unpredictable feelings emerge in these sorts of situations. And by the way, as Rolanda said, when kids are involved, everybody, no. Kids need a stable, safe environment. But what do you think, Annalise?
That's the worst part of it. I keep on thinking about the daughter because there's a daughter here that stayed with her father the entire time that he was accused of murder up until the trial. She lived with him. She was on there supporting him. She has lost her mother. She's now lost her father. And she lost her unborn brother. And I look at, if he did do it, not only the physical harm that he did to his wife, but also the emotional damage and the emotional trauma that he put his daughter through is inexcusable as a father.
By phone, I have Roseanne Smiley. She is the reporter who had covered this case. She was featured in the Forensic File episode you just saw. Roseanne, you were there at the trial. What was this guy like on the stand?
He was pretty calm and cool, and he ended up staying on the stand for like a total of 13 days, which is a long time. He was questioned directly by his lawyer, and I guess it was like 9.5 hours on direct, and then Ed Sherman spent 10 days on the witness stand under cross-examination. So that's pretty That's pretty grueling.
Roseanne, hold on one sec.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, by Jodi area standards, right, it doesn't seem like such a long time, but that is an enormously long time for somebody to be on the witness stand. And I think one of the important points, the takeaways here, is that in the context of a trial, lawyers score far more points on cross-examination than they do on direct. So to have somebody up on direct for 9 hours and then on cross for all of those days, that's a big piece of work.
Roseanne, what did he say about how they conducted their marriage? Was he defensive about that? Was he glib? Was he remorseful? What did you see?
It was a long time ago. All I can probably recall is that, it was the way things were. I mean, it was a way of life, and I know like we said before, other witnesses said that Ellen really didn't want to go along with it, but she did for her husband.
That's. I'm not surprised, because that is, like I said, often one is into it and one tolerates it, and eventually somebody wants to stop that. And in this case, money, wanting to stop mistresses leads to aggression and possibly violence. I'm not even convinced, by the way. I'm not convinced that he necessarily killed her in a premeditated fashion. I think it might have been more of his crazy sexual practices gone bad and then try to cover it up.
1985, Ellen Sherman found strangled in her bedroom. Police soon turned their focus to her husband.
If you had to describe your marriage, what type of a marriage would you say you had?
The couple had an open relationship.
The girlfriend had a child, and it was his child.
In fact, Ellen used to refer to her as Ed's Valley girl. She was blonde and very different looking.
Edward Sherman had strangled his pregnant wife because she was threatening to divorce him and leave him with nothing. He thought he could outsmart the police by staging the crime scene. Still with us, Rolanda, Annalise, and Darren. Here is more from the interrogation where Edward tells detectives how he ended things with the mistress. Take a look.
I terminated the relationship with this other woman. I was angry because I had to make a decision. And so I told Nancy, can't handle it anymore. She kept asking me, why?
And his friends described him as arrogant. They say he thought he was smarter than everyone else. Rolanda, he was not smarter than the prosecution, though, right?
Not smarter.
This business of turning the air conditioning up to delay rigor mortis resolution.
But even deeper than that, which was kind of interesting, to turn that air conditioner up so it's so cold that the decomposition is slower, which makes it look like it was not as long as it was. But anyway, the bottom line was he had talked a couple of things that he did. He talked about a movie where the exact same situation had happened.
The movie. He loved that movie.
Yeah, and he had suggested somebody watch it. And then also the phone call where he was supposedly calling his wife saying, I love you, honey. I'm away, but I love you and all this. And the little girl, the 9-year-old girl who was on the other side of the phone, and she was like, there was nobody on the other side of that phone. The phone was just ringing and ringing and ringing.
Annalise?
I have some issues. When we're watching this, it's very similar to our conversation that we have with Making a Murderer, right?
Yeah.
Where you're really only seeing one side of the story. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, well, she was pregnant, right? I was crazy hot when I was pregnant. Theoretically, you might turn up the AC pretty high. The victim was pregnant. She was 5 months pregnant.
Yeah.
You might turn the AC up pretty high when that happens. That's one thing. Two, there's the whole fighting between when was the time of death. It sounds to me like one expert won out over the other. But he certainly, I'm sure, had an expert on the stand saying the time of death happened on Saturday or Sunday. I think that there could have been some reasonable doubt. We're only seeing one side of the case here.
What about if the girl hadn't picked up the phone and hear him speaking to a dial tone?
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Right.
That was pretty damning evidence, don't you think?
I think so.
Well, and also what I love about these forensic files now is we get to go back and Monday morning quarterback, which is just great fun, and because we have all of this new information and it shifts the context. I almost think it's cute, like almost in an amateurish way, like, oh, and he turned down the thermostat, like no one was going to figure that one out. But this was, the 80s, and I guess the level of science and general understanding, that he thought mentally that he was going to get away with it, which is consistent.
I was curious, did they find the wife's DNA under the husband's fingernails or vice versa?
I don't think we heard about that.
They didn't cover it in the forensic files, at least.
I've got on the phone, I've got the detective, Michael Malchik. He is the detective who helped solve the case. Michael, did they find DNA that matched under either of their fingernails?
My understanding is, or my recollection, it's been so long, is that they did not, that I can recall. But if they found his DNA under her fingernails, that wouldn't make too much of a difference because it is actually his, her husband.
Right.
One thing I just want to make clear that nobody's mentioned yet, that this fellow is a Mensa, and if anybody knows what a Mensa is, and he always took the opportunity to tell everybody. A Mensa is a person that belongs to a high IQ club, and he believes that, for a better description, he's the smartest man in the room.
And Michael, what was your perception of him when you interviewed him? Did he seem arrogant? Did he take that attitude of haughty intellectual superiority?
Yes, and Roseanne Szymborski hit it right on the head. And during our investigation, everybody we talked to, and we talked to a lot of people, they all thought that she was wonderful. She was very great. She was. Everybody liked her. They loved her. But with him, it was the opposite.
Everyone liked the wife.
Like the wife, and everybody, it was the opposite. And they never said really why. They just didn't like him.
And then what about this open marriage, Michael? I mean, do you think that she was just going along with something to make him happy?
I really have no idea if that was the case, and actually that didn't have anything to do with this motive or this case. It was salacious, and it made a lot of headlines, but it really didn't. It had to do with the being squeezed between the girlfriend who was had a child, was pregnant, and then the wife who wanted to get pregnant with a second child.
Did anyone ever suspect the girlfriend?
Well, we did at first, but once we learned about different things about Ed, he had other girlfriends besides the. He was a professor at a local college, and the girlfriend, everybody up there at the college thought that was his wife, and everybody down in the East Lyme, Niantic area thought that the Ellen was Ellen was his wife.
And God knows
so
he may
was
hang a
leading
second.
a double life.
And he might have been preying on some of the college kids too.
Sure
Who knows? Yes, sir.
So I have this theory that in some sick, twisted way, he wanted to deface his wife by collecting the semen from different sexual partners. And maybe it was because, there was something that she wasn't really cool with. She wasn't cool with the promiscuity. So he wanted to deface her by killing her and, spreading her along all the,
all the other stains that were there.
It's pretty.
250 different stains.
But listen,
you might not wash your sheets. It's
they
so
just didn't do
disgusting.
a good job of washing their sheets. They just didn't do a good job of washing their sheets. I'll tell you, Michael, did you ever consider this wasn't premeditated at all, and it was just an accident? They were into weird sexual practices. Maybe they were into erotic asphyxiation. It went too far. He tried to cover it up.
No, I never thought of that for a minute. What you have to remember is, in my opinion, if you want to kill your wife, there's two ways to do it. You have to either do it yourself and then be able to place yourself somewhere at a far distance from where the murder took place, or you have to get somebody else to do it, and then you have to worry that that person's going to give you up.
Right. So Dan and I are taking notes, and we're going to make sure we kill the guy that we hired to kill the wife.
Honey, turn the channel. Nothing to see here.
But listen, just to complete the picture of who this scumbag was, what was he a professor of?
I've forgotten what he's a professor of. I think he was a psychology professor. If I'm
he
not
thought
mistaken.
he knew better than everybody. Fantastic.
The air conditioning system in the house was turned on, apparently to slow the decomposition of the body.
He asked me once, he asked me 10 times, do you know if they've determined the time of death? He was very interested in that. He also asked me one time if I knew how a body decomposed.
And we are following up on Forensic Files. Edward Sherman killed his wife, tried to throw detectives off by staging the crime scene. He turned the air conditioning on full blast to allegedly delay the body's process of decay. So rigor mortis was prolonged. Back with Rolanda, Annalise, and Darren. Now, in the last block, I discussed this case had a lot of bizarre sexual details. Here is a forensic scientist talking about it.
lot of semen stain.
I'm just glad.
So apparently, like 150 to 200. Now, what they didn't specify was 150 to 200 different deposits.
Which is an important clarification to make.
Or was this just a couple that didn't wash their sheets very well?
Yeah, either way, people should be disgusted by this, right? Like,
from
do
the
your
housekeeping
laundry. It looks like one of those Dateline undercover operations where they go into the hotel and it's all, this is your own home. Get some Tide and do some laundry.
But considering they were into orgies and all of this, it probably was a bunch of people's different semen spots.
Yeah,
but you can clean them
It's an
still.
important question. And Dr. Drew, you asked
Just a
a
second.
question.
I want to take a moment. I never thought I'd be on this show having those words come out of Roland's mouth. I just want to take a second. I'm going to take a moment. I think even you were surprised it came out of your mouth.
I was surprised it came out.
So okay, go ahead.
And
Jared.
God knows I'm not often considered the voice of reason.
Yes.
But I would just urge caution that we're talking about how sexually adventurous these people are.
Right.
But yet that doesn't necessarily connect the dots all the way to murder.
No, it
swinging isn't killing.
Yes,
There's a big
yes,
difference.
mini-me. But it does, however, Captain Evil, Dr. Evil. Yeah, that was his best Dr. Evil. But I'll tell you what it does do. It really, auto asphyxiation, or not even auto, sexual asphyxiation is a common practice. Particularly back then, people did not understand how dangerous it was. People die frequently in an autoerotic setting or in an interpersonal setting. It is easy to go from high levels of arousal to death. It's very easy.
To overshoot that mark.
That's right. And I've seen people, not infrequently, go that too far and then try to cover it up. And if this guy's so smart, I could see him going through multiple steps, including calling, going out on the boat, just thinking it through instantly and coming up with all these alibis. It could have been an accident. Even though this guy was a screwball, he was not somebody you wanted as a husband. The boundaries were terrible. I'm concerned he may have been acting out on college kids or even certainly graduate students over there. I mean, and back then, I mean, it was just coming out of the 70s when everything was cool, man, whatever you're into. And I'm saying that's not cool.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, I think what's interesting from an investigative standpoint is we're talking about something in the 80s, right?
Yep.
And I'm looking at this thinking, well, supposedly, allegedly, he turns down the air conditioning. That sounds like something you'd almost see in a Google search, right?
We didn't have Google.
How to slow the decomposition of a bottle, of a body. There was no Google search, and it almost seems like that would be the knee-jerk of what you would do.
But
and
he'd
so
seen the
instead,
movie.
we find ourselves looking at this movie, which seems like more of a sketch
He had
to
seen
me.
the movie. He had seen the movie and brought it up
Oh, he
repeatedly.
had seen
Yes,
it.
he.
Oh, I thought there was a movie that was out in distribution.
He was actually asked people to see the movie with him. He enjoyed it, saw it a few times. I want to show you what the body looks like when rigor mortis sets in. You can keep a room freezing. Of course, that slows the process down. Do we have this? Yes. It's a rigidity that the muscles constrict, every muscle in the body, for about 24 hours, and then it breaks down again. And so it's something that, investigators can really time very specifically. And this was a weird sort of duration of rigor mortis.
But some of the things that also the medical examiner found was there was a question about whether the body was dead before the panty got wrapped around the neck, and also the fingernails. Her fingernails revealed a lot. According to the report, they were bent back as if she had been fighting. So that doesn't sound like freaky sex to me. That sounds like trying to save my life.
Again, who knows? We'll never know.